And let me know when we're streaming.
All right, we're all set.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence to remember the service and sacrifices of the armed service members who protect our nation and the first responders who protect our neighborhoods. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Councilmember Kelly?
Here.
Councilmember Quinn?
Here.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Here.
Councilmember Kritz?
Here.
Councilmember Salberg?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Noon?
Here.
Vice President Starkett?
Here.
President Jackson?
Present. We have a quorum. This meeting was advertised in the Daily Record and the Star Ledger, the official newspapers for the Township of Rockaway, on February 5th, 2021. Notice was posted in the official bulletin board of Rockaway Township. Two things before we get started. Christy, we're sure we're streaming, right? I just want to make sure.
Double check it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're streaming.
Mr. Kritz, I believe you wanted to be recognized. You're so recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a second and just show a little appreciation to Pat, Brian, and Lisa. I know during the last meeting, I quickly brought up AEDs. And so after the meeting, I emailed Ms. Seeger just to kind of go over the remaining budget and see, because we had already passed most sections, to see if we needed to raise an issue with the capital to try to get these AEDs put into place. So I spent some time back and forth, and then eventually got onto a quick call with them. And Pat was kind enough to do a little bit of legwork, and between the three of them discovered that we have the money in the capital already. So as soon as the budget is passed, we are going to move ahead with outfitting the 17 different practice facilities in Rockaway and the schools with AEDs. Brian has graciously taken on the laborious task of dealing with the contracts and setting them up and the signing and everything that needs to go with installation. But it was a little bit of work in the background, like I said, through emails and phone calls. But I just wanted to recognize Brian, Lisa, and Pat for the work that they did. And now our rec facilities will have AEDs.
Nice.
Good job.
Since we're talking about that, Ms. Seeger, I assume are we lined up? I mean, I know they take maintenance and all that, like they have to be tested periodically. Will we be doing that? We'll have our staff doing that to make sure that nothing's expired in them and all that.
That will be in the plan that Brian has to put together for the maintenance
Okay.
of the AEDs.
Perfect. Thank you. With that said, let's get into the municipal utility to water division. We're on page 227.
Council
I have
President?
some questions, Council President.
Mr. Kelly,
Yeah,
did you have questions?
I did. I believe we're going into the budget. I was going to follow up with Mr. Kritz on something he said regarding the defibrillators that are there. But I don't know how you want to, do we want to move forward with this budget, or can we address that and move forward at the same time?
Let's just move forward with the budget. There's a budget meeting, and then Mr. Salberg, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did, yes. If I may I ask a question of Ms. Palmieri before we start a new chapter?
Sure.
Thank you. I just want to know, when we were, when you were putting together the budget for Section 1, specifically legal fees, were you aware of the 5 lawsuits that Councilman Kelly had on our town?
They were not, I was not aware of all of them, no.
Got it. Do we know at that time, obviously we were looking at, I assume, standard and usual type of expenses. Do we know if we have sufficient cash with such a influx of lawsuits? Do we know if now, if we have enough money? And if not, I'd like to know if I can make a motion to reopen section 1 to discuss legal fees.
You can always open up and make a motion to discuss it further.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to reopen section 1 so we can discuss legal fees, knowing now the incredible amount of money we're going to have to waste on these lawsuits.
Anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second that
I would
motion.
second it too.
Clerk, can you take the roll?
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Quinn,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander,
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
Vice President Sackett,
Yes.
President Jackson,
Yes, that's 9 yeses. The motion carries. We'll open section 1 for discussion. Mr. Salberg, since it was your motion, did you want to lead a discussion or?
Can we just get a moment to get to that section?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Salberg. You start.
Yeah,
Talking.
thank you.
What
Actually,
page are you on, Mr. Salberg?
I'd like
Mr.
to,
Kelly, stop interrupting.
What
I would
page?
like to start possibly with our attorney and our mayor. Do we have any current numbers as to the additional burden on our residents due to these 5 lawsuits?
I'm not going to speak to the what the lawsuits are about, but I will address some of the finances. When we formulated the budget, just to give you a little history, and Ms. Palmieri, Ms. Seeger, please jump in. We actually this year we budgeted, took a little bit out of legal. We try to anticipate. Remember, the budget is a lot of it is anticipated. Some things we leave in there as a cushion, for like maintenance, for different things like that. And the same thing holds true for our legal. You can never tell how much you're going to spend on legal. You can only try to forecast from past experiences. So we lowered the amount a little bit this year, not anticipating the additional, legal expenses that are coming our way. So I can't forecast what's going to happen, what path certain lawsuits are going to take with, the current ones that are open, and if there's going to be any additional ones filed in any area. So I'm going to let Ms. Palmieri, Ms. Seeger speak to that in terms of what they feel is best as far as financially, how we're going to deal with the large amount of lawsuits.
But just to clarify, the contingency of these fees, is it all captured based on Ms. Palmer on page 33, legal services?
May I say something, sir?
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Moore, you're recognized.
Well, I mean, I didn't know this was coming up, and it's hitting me, sort of off guard, but I don't think that Mr. Kelly should be participating in discussions and/or voting on this particular line item if it becomes something that you put in as a line item. He has something to gain.
What is that would have to gain, Mr. Perrone?
Let me finish, Mster Kelly.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly, you're not recognized.
I don't have the statute in front of me. I don't have the statute in front of me. I think it's 40A9-22, which is the ethics law. And I believe that Mr. Kelly would be prohibited from participating. He can decide what he wants to do. I just want to guide him appropriately. I believe that the ethics law would be effective.
Okay.
And I think that it affects him negatively, and that I would advise him not to participate.
All right, I don't want to get too deeply into this, but I guess Ms. Palmieri, Mrs. Seeger, so where, if I'm looking at legal services on page 33, right? There's professional consulting, contractual fees, other fees. Like where are we capturing contingency for potential lawsuits? In the other fees line item or where?
Some of it would be in contractual. Some of the litigation is in the regular attorney, at least if I'm
Right.
misspeaking. And when we hire special conflict, it would be in other fees.
Right.
Am I
So
right?
when
Mrs. Palmer?
So I guess I would get back to the initial question, you both being the professionals, based on what you know today, do we still feel comfortable with the amounts we have, with the amount you have initially recommended in those line items?
Yes.
Well, I can speak for myself. When I was doing the budget, we didn't raise the fees even though everybody's hourly rate went up, because we didn't anticipate a lot of lawsuits, because we haven't had them until recently. And there's no way I can anticipate that, but knowing that I have 5, now's the time. If you want to add money into it, this is the time to do it. If you remember 2 years ago, when we had all those lawsuits, we had to come back, and maybe Mrs. Palmieri can explain that. We had to do an emergency for more money, and I'd rather not do that because it doesn't look well. And Ms. Palmieri, can you speak about that?
Yes, I can. It was actually in 2017, we passed an emergency resolution for $475,000 because of excessive legal fees. And then in 2018, we had to raise that money in that year's budget to appropriate the funds for that previous year's emergency. It's not good practice if you know you're going to anticipate excessive fees coming down the line. Now is the time to adjust the budget accordingly.
Yeah, I guess the issue is like in the items that are budgeted there already, what percentage is capturing some of these things that we already knew about? You know, like I would want to, make, if we were going to make a addition to the budget line item, I would think we'd want to make an educated amount put out there, not just throw out a guess.
I don't think I could estimate what that number is. I don't know the nature of the lawsuits. I don't know the extensive time pertaining to the lawsuits. Maybe the attorneys could help there. I don't know.
Joe, Mr. Jackson, when we did this, it's hard to say what percentage is lawsuits and what percentage is just normal attorneys that they work on, but it really depends on our exposure, and maybe Mr. Perone can help us with that.
Okay, well, again, this is something that just came up.
Yeah.
I don't think this is something that we should be, the nature of the lawsuits, the possible liabilities, the possible cost factors that would be attendant to those liabilities are things that should be part of a closed session.
Okay.
If you want to postpone this to another session, a different date, I think that would be appropriate.
Honestly, Mr. Perone, I'm inclined to do that at this point. I think you're right. And since we don't really have a firm estimate that we could go with to even increase the line item, I don't think we should go down this path during this meeting. You okay with that, Mr. Salberg, if we just move forward for now?
Absolutely. I think it could have a grave negative impact on the town, and I think it's worthy of our time.
All right. Would you like to make a motion to close back out section 1 of the budget?
Yes, I make a motion to close back out section 1 of the budget.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second that.
Clerk, you can take the roll call.
Councilmember Kelly,
No, I think we can continue talking about it.
Councilmember Quinn,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander,
Yes.
Councilmember Fritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Abstain.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
Vice President Sackett, I didn't hear you if you voted.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Council President Jackson,
Yes, that's 7 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention. We're closing out section 1.
Uh, Mr. Jackson, can I just say one thing?
Real quick, Mr. Seeger, you're recognized.
Do you want me to add a closed door session to the next council meeting?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
please.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, back to section 21. I will open it up for questions.
I had
Council
the floor
President,
originally
really-
there, Mr. Jackson.
Wait. What?
Really quick, I would like to remind everyone, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. I'm getting a lot of feedback. It sounds like you guys are underwater.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, who would like to lead with questions in section 21?
I originally had my question raised originally when Mr. Salberg interrupted me.
Go ahead. You can go, Mr. Kelly. You're recognized.
First and foremost, though, before we go forward, Mr. Perone, are you there still? Mr. Perone?
Mr. Kelly, we're talking about section
I
21.
understand that. I'm asking Mr. Perone if he's available.
I'm here.
Hey, legal counsel, how are you?
I'm here.
Mr. Perone, just moving forward, I understand the intent that Mr. Salberg had. He really had no interest in the legal end of it.
All right,
But
Mr.
could you
Kelly,
provide
you're no
us
longer
with,
This has nothing to do with me, Mr. Kelly.
Could
You're
you
no
provide
longer
us with
recognized, Mr.
a
Kelly.
litigation inventory?
Does anybody else have questions?
I
Mr.
have
Kelly's no
questions,
longer
Council
recognized.
President.
No, you're not
You're
asking
not going
about
to
this
show my
section.
First Amendment again, Council President.
Will you stop it? You're being silly.
I have
Mr.
questions on the budget, but before I went in there, like Mr. Salberg, I had
No,
a question for Mr. Perone.
no, I'm not recognizing for a question, Mr. Perone. If you have questions on this section, you're more than welcome to ask it.
Well, Mr.
So,
Jackson, I
That's
do.
what we're here to
and
talk about. That's what we're here to talk about. Does
Why
anybody
was
else have questions?
Why was
on this
Mr.
section?
Salberg allowed the courtesy, though?
It didn't allow him any courtesy different than you. He wanted to open section 1 and have discussion about a budget line item. We spoke
And
about
I
it.
do
The
too.
council voted to close the section. We're
I
done
understand that.
about it.
But
So I'm
ask,
not taking away any of your rights. Stop lining up your
you
next.
are, but you're not allowing me to
I'm
ask
not,
the
I'm
town
not.
attorney a question.
I know this is hard for you
Can
to
I
follow.
ask a town attorney a question, Mr.
No,
Jackson?
not about section 1.
Okay, you're killing my right.
We
On page
closed it.
33 on
I know it's hard
page-
for you to understand.
No, you're killing my
Yeah,
right.
it
It's
is. Does
okay.
anybody have questions about this
I
section?
have it on page 227.
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Garabran, are you there?
You're muted. There you go.
Yes, I am.
Hey, Mr. Garabran, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for all your service and doing the water repair that we had, as well as the snow removal and salting with all your guys. I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you.
Moving forward, on page 227, we have a assistant superintendent. And what I've seen here, we have basically 12 employees, from laborers all the way up to the superintendent. And one of those 12 is a laborer. Would that be accurate that we have?
I believe so, yes.
Now, do you have the revised book, or are you running on an older book?
Couldn't tell you what I have right here, whether it's new or old. It was sent to me today.
Okay, so you,
I believe it would be new.
okay, so, but the prior information you were looking at was an older information?
I believe so.
Okay. Was there a reason for that?
No.
Okay. So I see 12 employees. We have one of those 12 employees is a laborer.
Okay.
That would be on, I'm counting on 228 would be the page to see that information.
I don't have the book in front of me with page numbers on it.
Okay. What do you have in front of you then that we can reference to make it easier?
I have the 2021 budget request and the 2021 capital budget program. I do not have the book with line items and whatnot like you do.
Okay. Have you ever got this before?
No.
Okay.
No.
Gene, you received it back in November October when I gave you your budget requests. Everyone got
Okay.
summary sheets.
Okay.
But I have this book, Mrs. Palmieri, is January 14th, 2021. Would Mr. Garabran have that?
I don't know what Mr. Garabran has.
Well, obviously he doesn't have what the rest of us have. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, we have a budget meeting that's been planned for a little over a week and a half in advance.
Are you gonna get to a question?
Well, I mean, how can I get a question with Mr. Garabin if he doesn't have the same information that we're looking at?
What's
you
your
answer
question?
the-
Maybe he'll know. Ask him the question.
Mr. Garabin, do you have the ability to answer any questions based on the budget books that the council has?
I can certainly try, yes.
We have the assistant superintendent.
Yep,
We've had this position vacant since 2016, I believe.
correct.
Now we have a position that is set aside for 105,000. And then we have a supervisor for the water and sewer that's just shy of 102. So since we've had a vacancy so long for this position, and we never had a call for it before, what is the need that we have for an assistant superintendent now?
So the position for the assistant superintendent is in preparation of anybody that's going to be retiring, that person might be able to take over for.
Do we have any projected retirements now for 2021?
Not that I'm aware of.
And if we, if you're not available, to, let's say you're on vacation or you're ill or whatnot, what position, not the person's name, but who would fill your void in the time frame that you're not there?
As of today, the assistant superintendent would.
But who does it right now?
Depending upon what the emergency is, it would either be the backup licensed operator or one of our supervisors.
And either one of them can handle the task of your vacancy of a position, you not being available?
I think it would depend on what happens, whether it was a everyday misfortune, the supervisors could probably handle. If it has anything to do with DEP, it would have to be the backup licensed operator.
Do you have any idea why we haven't had that position in the last 5 years or 4 years?
I believe there was no progression for the possibility of the position being opened.
But you just said to us now that we don't have any anticipated retirements coming up to where we would fill that position.
I said in 2021.
Right, and we're doing the 2021 budget right now.
Okay, so when I was hired as assistant superintendent, I was hired in advance, 5 years in advance of my predecessor's anticipation of retirement, in order to prepare and prep this person on the township system, and the policies and procedures so that they could take over if need be.
But we show a void of an assistant superintendent for quite some time, even after you were hired.
Correct.
So were you considered the assistant superintendent even though we have a void of that position?
No, once Bobby, or my predecessor was promoted, I was made superintendent and that position was vacated.
But you were able to get by without having that position?
That is correct.
Okay. The other thing is that we have stipends that we have here. We have $5,000 in stipends all the way across the board from 17 to the present proposed budget in 2021. And is that the only stipend that goes to you?
That is correct.
Okay. And what does that stipend entail?
It's my understanding that it covers any and all overtime that I may incur throughout the year.
Superintendents can get overtime?
We do not get
Department
overtime.
heads?
We do not get overtime. That's what the stipend is for, is my understanding, as it was explained to me.
So there's a cap, like you could have an amount of time well over the 5,000, but you can only get 5,000.
That is correct.
And that's on top of your salary that you have now.
That is correct.
Okay. And then the provisional salary adjustments, we've been having 5,000, 5,000. Last year we did 32,000, and then this year we're requesting another 32,000. Do you know how much of that salary adjustment we've utilized from last year's budget to this year?
No, I do not. I would have to sit down with Ms. Palmieri and figure out who got what and where.
Mrs. Palmieri, do you know the answer to that?
Not off the top of my head, no. My guess is that most of it was used because I believe there were several people who were promoted, but I would have to research that.
Okay, is it something that that it would be pointed out inside these pages here? Mrs. Palmieri?
I can answer something, Mr. Jackson.
You could be recognized, Mrs. Seeger.
Thank you. I can tell you it all was not used last year because the one license did not come through, and I think it might have had something to do with COVID and the delay. So I know we didn't use it all.
So we didn't use any of it last year, Mrs. Seeger?
I didn't say that. I said we didn't use it all. That was your question.
Okay, it's hard to hear you because you have whatever noise in the background. Mrs. Seeger, could you find out that information relatively quickly?
I do not have it on me to find out right away. Thanks. Sorry.
Okay. So, based on what we have here for these provisional salary adjustments, if we were to have somebody, Mr. Garabrandt, that would be, let's say, for instance, a supervisor water sewer, through that salary adjustment, we could always add the $3,100 to their salary to create the $105,000 that we're seeking for this position, right?
I'm not sure of that.
Mrs. Palmieri, could that be something that would be done? If we were doing a salary adjustment for a promotion, I mean, Mayor Puzio said this at the last meeting, that in case there's a promotion or he feels somebody's doing a great job, we can then, act on that salary provision. Could we modify the salary of that supervising water sewer to $105,000?
I believe that would be really the mayor's prerogative, how we would want to allocate that money.
Does it? Whether the mayor does it, the council does it, can it be done?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. How that 32,000 is allocated, or that can be added?
I'm sorry, I'll make it easier. Could the mayor, based on his salary adjustment, increase that one position to $105,000 if he wished to?
Which position is that?
It would be the supervisor water sewer.
Supervisor.
Yeah, it's at $101,880.
Anything. I don't think that's the intention.
Well, what's the intention of the salary adjustment then?
That is not to be just. The salary provision of the salary adjustment are for many people. It's not particularly one person.
No, I understand that, and I'm not saying that we would use all $32,000. I'm talking about the salary adjustments. Let me step back then before I make my motion, Mrs. Seeger. What is the salary adjustments or provisions for?
They are for when the department head asks for a raise for someone, ask for a title change, ask for a promotion, or someone doing a really good job, and that's up to the prerogative of the management.
There's a lot of feedback on her. Can anybody understand what Mrs. Seeger was saying?
Yes, I did.
What is she saying, Mr. Jackson?
He said head for their individual department made recommendations for people that they wanted to promote or reward for doing a good job or things of that nature. So they would put in a request for additional money and salary adjustments and promotion to use to give to those individuals.
And who would make that final decision based on that request?
So the department head would make the request, and my assumption would be that the mayor and Mrs. Seeger and Mrs. Palmieri would make the final recommendation for what they were given.
You mean they would actually confirm the request for the recommendation?
Yeah,
Is that correct, Mrs. Palmieri?
That's
It
correct.
would be the
That's
mayor.
correct.
Okay, that was just a simple question asked in the beginning. So with that being said, we have this vacant position that's been vacant for over 4 years. We don't have anybody that's being retired. It looks like the supervisor could potentially be the next in line. We can easily adjust that individual salary from 101 to 105 based on the request from the department head and the approval by the mayor and administration. So I make a motion that we eliminate the $105,000.
Jackson, can I be recognized?
Mr. Kelly,
Uh,
if you hold on 1 second. Wait, if you could just stop 1 second. I would like to confirm, Mrs. Seeger, is that position still vacant?
No, it is not. It has been filled.
Can I speak for a moment, Council President?
Go ahead. You're recognized, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. As I've stated before at prior budget meetings, I try to anticipate that there's going to be retirements for certain departments, whether it's in a year or 2 years. The water is unique in that we have a certain amount of infrastructure that if someone is going to come on board, is going to take over a position, they have to require certain licenses. They have to require certain training. There's a certain, how can we say, learning curve as far as the town infrastructure, so the person gains some institutional knowledge. All of what I'm saying is in anticipation after speaking with some of my department heads, some of the employees, looking at what licenses they have, looking at their skill set. This was a decision of mine that I worked on with Gene Garabrandt, Lisa Palmieri, Pat Seeger. We all sat down in anticipation of certain personnel decisions which fall under the office of the mayor. And this is to get somebody in place so they can gain that training, get those licenses, and that we're not going to be without a person who can possibly fill in or be promoted to a superintendent at some point. So this is just pre-planning.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that being said, is there an acceptance letter for the position?
All we're here to do is to vote on the amounts.
Mr. Mayor, is there an acceptance letter for the position?
Not going to delve into acceptance letters. That is
Well, you
doesn't
just
fall
told
under
me
the
somebody's been
council.
hired.
So thank you, Mr. Kelly. I'm not going to be answering any other questions.
Okay, Mrs. Seeger, is there an acceptance letter for the position?
Ms. Seeger, we've already answered the question. You put it out. We don't need to talk about acceptance letters. It doesn't.
When you said that somebody's been hired, I want to validate that somebody's been hired, or are you just telling me?
We just told you someone's been hired.
So there's been an acceptance letter then, is that correct?
Someone's been hired for the position. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Garabrandt? Mr. Garabrandt, before I make my motion,
Yes, go ahead.
has there been somebody hired?
Yes, there's somebody hired.
And there's been an acceptance letter and there's an interview process?
Interview process, yes.
When was that taking place?
Over the last 4 months.
Okay. And is that person currently working in the township now?
Yes.
Council President, this is all stuff that falls under the auspices.
You're interrupting me. I have the floor. You're not recognized, Mr. Mayor.
Questions that are not pertinent to your
Mr. Mayor, you're
position.
not recognized.
You are not the mayor.
You're not recognized, Mr. Mayor.
Hold on here, Mr. Kelly.
Don't get involved in
Mayor
it.
Cluzio, please stop. You're not recognized. Mr. Kelly, make a motion, do whatever you want, but you've been talking for half an hour and accomplished nothing.
Well, I have people that aren't telling me the information, whether or not we have somebody hired, an acceptance letter moving forward.
They did, and you didn't trust their answers. So
I
that's
don't
fine.
I don't
But are
trust
you
the
making a
answers on
motion?
most
Are you
occasions,
making a
no.
motion? Do you have anything to make a motion on?
Well, I have a motion to reduce the line of the assistant superintendent from 105 to 0. But now that we have information that from Mr. Garabrandt that somebody's been hired, are they currently acting as the assistant superintendent?
There's somebody hired in the position, so we're not going to eliminate the budget, obviously. So all these details, you could call call administration tomorrow and try and get answers. We're here
No,
to-
I don't, because I don't get honest answers. I don't feel comfortable talking to anybody in the
Well, that's
administration.
your problem, Mr.
This is
Kelly.
why we have
That's
budget
your
meetings, so
problem,
we
Mr.
can
Kelly.
all have conversations and talk about that without
That's your
being
problem, that you
violations of the
don't
Open
you don't
Public
trust
Meeting Act.
anybody. That's your problem.
It's
Not
not my
ours.
problem.
So do you have any other questions on this section, Mr. Kelly? Let's
I
go.
have on provisional salary adjustments. We've always had 5,000 across the board. I make a motion to reduce the 32,000 back to $5,000. We haven't used it last year.
Anybody like to second that motion? Okay, what's your next motion, Mr. Kelly?
Over on page 229, sub-account 014, we have 170.5 for 2018 expended. It went down in 2019, 128, and at 2020 we had requested 120. Now, I know that we've had COVID, but there's a lot of things that take place, and I'm not sure about the amount of overtime, but it looks like we've only used $70,000 in overtime in 2020. Now we have it back up to 120. Mr. Garabrandt, do you foresee so far from where we're at in 2021 to the middle of February of amount of overtime and usage? And can you explain the small amount of overtime expended in 2020 of last year?
Well, the limited amount of overtime in 2020 was due to one of the mildest winters that we've had in quite a few years. We were very fortunate to not have as many mishaps, breakdowns, what have you. As far as projecting what's going to happen for the rest of this year, I cannot project that, but based on the last 10 days and the 3 mishaps that we've already had due to this cold weather snap, anything can happen.
Would you be okay with reducing a little bit of overtime? Like if we went from 120 to 100?
I would have to leave that up to I wouldn't be comfortable with it, but if Lisa were to be comfortable with it, she could address it, but I personally wouldn't be comfortable with it not being able to project what's going to happen over the next 2 months.
Okay, well, if you're not comfortable with it, Mr. Garabrandt, I mean, not that Mrs. Palmieri doesn't know numbers. I mean, you know, snow removal, overtime, and water and sewer issues that are there. So if you feel that the 120 it's something that you can't deal with, and you're basing the overtime only because of minimal snow usage rather than other issues of water breaks, sewer lines issues, well issues. You know, I don't know how much snow we're going to have now in the middle of this year moving forward. What about if we were to compromise and instead of doing it down to 100, maybe just taking 10,000 off for the overtime?
Yeah, I don't. I would have to say that I'm not comfortable.
Okay.
That's. I can't project what's going to happen, and
okay.
That's all.
That's fair enough. Going over again, Mr. Garabrandt, you don't have the pages here, I don't think. On sub-account 059, which is on page 229, we had an expenditure, an amount of just under $6,000 in 2020 for computer equipment. And in 2018, we spent about $2,000. 19 was only $500. We adopted 3,000 in 2020, and we spent almost double that amount. But since we doubled the amount moving forward, do we have any upgrades or improvements to your computer systems in your department since we just recently spent all that money in 2020?
Gene, unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. The increase was due to the fact that my laptop quit here towards the end of the year, and we had to replace that, which I believe is the increase in that computer. But we do not anticipate any upgrades in personal equipment.
So would you be comfortable? Would you be comfortable reducing that $3,000 line item to $1,500 since you got double the amount of money last year for some improvements in your own laptop?
I am not sure what I am going to need moving forward. I would prefer to leave it where it is.
So you have no idea if there's any, well, maybe Mrs. Seeger can help out with this. She's more of the technical. Mrs. Seeger, do you foresee any of the need for new computer items or software?
We're always updating software and computers. You know how temperamental things can be. Your screen can go out tomorrow, but you didn't anticipate it. I think the amount he has there is very comfortable based on his usage.
But we used $6,000 last year, so we used the $3,000 that was put aside. And was Mr. Garabrand's computer $3,000?
Excuse me, I didn't hear that last part.
I'm sorry?
Didn't hear the question.
I said last year we spent $6,000 with Mr. Garabrand's computer, $3,000.
We're not going to be spending 6,000.
I didn't ask you that. I said we spent $6,000 last year. Was Mr. Garabrand's computer $3,000?
I don't know off the top of my head how much his computer was, but he said that was the reason why the increase, but that could be a total. I don't know. Mr. Kelly just got off the line here. His computer went down.
Council President, can I be recognized?
Yes.
Just keep in mind that the department heads, we sat down with them for the course of a few months, and they gave us recommendations, and we worked with them to try to run things as lean as possible. So when you hear Mr. Garabrand saying he's not comfortable, these are the same answers that he gave us.
I know, absolutely. Mr. Seeger, can we use some of this money? Perhaps Mr. Kelly needs contract raise. It's dropped off now. I don't know if we could use some of that for him.
We can use, I can help in my computer budget with some of this, and we have some capital sometimes if anybody gets stuck, but 3,000
Listen, I'm comfortable where we're at. I think we, a bunch of us have asked questions.
Can I ask a question, Joe?
Well, Mr. Kelly's, he's still freezing up a little. Go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Okay, it was strictly about this one line item, so that's why.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was the 2019 budget number for that line item? Do we know?
Yeah, it was $508.
Well, no, that's what was expended, right? That's not what was actually budgeted.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So for argument's sake, if in 2019 we had $3,000 in budget and we didn't use it, so it went back in, and as Ms. Palmieri said the other day, it's around for 2 years, right? So if there's leftover money there, then that should cover the extra money that we had for that computer needed, no?
So what happens if the money was in the budget? It would have been moved to where, Mrs. Palmieri?
Okay, so you can't mix the 2 years.
Yeah,
So
the 2
if
years,
it's a
you can't.
19 expense, it's charged to the 19 budget. If it's a 20 expense, it's charged to the 20 budget. So it's not just because we didn't spend 2020 that we can now just charge 2020's budget for 21's expenses. You can't mix the years. It's just
It's
it's a
that damn
2-year budget
government
cycle.
accounting, Mr. Brooks. It's that government accounting again. It's messed up.
Welcome to my world.
Goes to fund balance.
Goes to We can hear you, Mr. Kelly. We just can't see you.
Can we mute him?
Yeah, he's completely gone now.
Mr. Kelly's computer froze. He just called to let me know he's logging. He logged off and he's trying to log back on.
Okay, we'll wait for him to join. While we're waiting for him, does anybody else have questions on this section? Oh, my Google thing's talking. Does anybody else have questions on this section, section 21?
No.
Okay, so we'll wait for Mr. Kelly to come back on.
Can I be recognized, please?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Palmieri.
I mean, maybe I'm stating the obvious, but I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. This water department is a completely separate budget from taxes. It has no impact on taxes at all. And also, the water rates are not affected at all by this budget as well. I don't think we're going to be seeing a rate increase. I know we're not going to see a rate increase this year. I'm expecting, hopefully not to see one next year, but we'll see. But this does not affect 2021 water rates.
Yeah, I think that's probably why you're hearing the 8 other council members don't have many questions.
Yeah, we try, Joe, we try to take in, what we spend,
Yep.
So that's why we try to keep it stable.
And if at any time anybody who wants to make a motion to approve
Joe,
this,
I'd like to make a motion to close this section. We've been on it for 40 minutes.
Yes, and I'll second that
all
motion.
right,
Yes.
let's just wait till Mr. Kelly gets back on.
That could be an hour.
Well, let's give him 10 minutes.
That's why you don't cut the computer budget.
Chrissy, is Councilman Kelly on the iPad or his computer?
Has he picked up his iPad yet? Those work nice.
He's on his home computer.
He has
Okay.
not picked up his iPad.
No?
No, he's the only one who has not picked it up.
Okay.
I had Vice President Sackett making the motion to close out this tab, and who was our second?
I was.
Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Quinn, we're fighting
Thank
over
you.
it. Hey, you could give the iPad to DPW.
Good one.
Did Al drop off? Al's on. Al, you there?
I'm here.
What's this crap I hear? We had another storm on Thursday. Is that real?
Chrissy,
Unfortunately, another 3 to 6 inches.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
can Mr. Kelly call?
I just spent most of the day cleaning the ice out of my gutters.
Sorry, Mayor. I hear you, but I have a lot
Right.
of feedback. I can't
I
quite
said,
understand what you're
I
saying.
said, can Mr. Kelly, he doesn't need to be on the video. Can he use his telephone to call in through the meeting notice? Just do an audio call instead of video. And that'll,
He can. That is an option if he can't log back in.
okay, I just wanted to suggest that in case he hasn't thought of it.
I'm sure I'll hear from him if he has an issue logging in.
Mr. Perone, are you there?
Yes, I'm slow to
What
unmute.
would be the protocol? Oh, he's getting back on. Okay.
Gotta stop talking about me.
We will. You can watch the video. So there's been a motion to approve this section by Mr. Sackett and a second.
I wasn't done, Mr. Jackson, as far as my portion of it.
Yeah, I know, but there's a motion on the table, so we're gonna.
Well, I was still doing it and had the floor, and we had a difficulty time being connected. So
Yeah, I
why are
know.
you going to all of a sudden take my time away?
There's no
I had a
allotted
pending
time.
motion that was there. We
There's
had
no allotted
discussion with
time.
Mrs. Seeger.
Mr. Perone, if there's a motion and a second to approve this section, can we move forward with that?
You're compelled to move forward with the motion.
Okay.
So again, you're not going to give me my right, Mr. Jackson. You're going to violate my constitutional right to participate in this
No,
meeting.
you have plenty of,
Thank you.
you've been speaking for 40 minutes. You have plenty of rights to speak.
Thank you,
Unfortunately,
Mr.
you speak
Jackson.
about Nothing.
Thank you, Mr.
Go
Jackson.
ahead. We should probably talk about lawsuit contingencies again, but go ahead, Ms. Clifferton, take the roll call.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
Vice President Sackett,
Yes.
President Jackson,
Yes, that's 8 yeses, 1 no. Unfortunately, Mr. Kelly doesn't support your budget, Mr. Garabran, but the rest of us do. We will move on to section 22.
I have a motion,
Open
Mr. Jackson.
space.
I have a motion,
Sure,
Mr.
Kelly,
Jackson.
you can make a motion.
Reopen the water department budget so we can complete that from some of the comments I had.
Anybody
The
want to
clerk
second
had
that motion?
informed me that you were going to wait until I got back on the meeting to continue.
We did. I waited till we did anything. I can't help it
Well,
that
you had a
somebody
motion made before I got onto the meeting.
What am I to do with that? Somebody made a
Why
motion.
was it Mr. Freelander could hold up the meeting for 15 minutes and I
Does
have a
anybody have
glitch and
any
we have to all of a
questions
sudden
on-
move very fast and expand it
Does
on
anybody
you?
have any questions on section 22?
I have on 078 on the faculty rental.
What are you talking about on section 22? What page?
230.
That's section 21.
I had a motion to
Anybody have any questions
reopen.
on section 22? If not,
I have a motion to reopen 21.
nobody approved it. Nobody
You gotta
seconded
ask
it.
for a roll call.
Somebody have a second? No, you don't. Stop it, Mr. Kelly. Stop being childish. Anybody want to make a motion to approve
I'm not
section
being
22?
childish again. You're depriving me of my ability to participate in this budget meeting, Mr. Jackson. We're talking about $40 million plus.
Mr. Kelly, you spoke for 50 minutes. I'm not depriving nothing.
I wasn't
Does
completed,
anybody
and
want
the
to make a
clerk
motion
informed
to
me that you
approve
were going to
section
wait until I
22?
got back.
We
You
waited.
did not wait
Mr.
for me to get
Sackett,
back onto
wanna
the
say
meeting.
something?
Motion. I'll make
Council
the
President,
motion.
can we move on? We have an agenda.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a
Mr.
motion.
Puzzi, are you not recognizing it's not your meeting?
Mr. Sackett, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve section 22, please.
Second.
I will second the motion.
Okay, clerk, you can take the call.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Quinn,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander,
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
Vice President Sackett,
Yes.
President Jackson,
Yes, that's 9 yeses. Section 22 is approved. Section 23 of the budget.
I have some questions, Council President.
Go ahead, you're recognized, Mr. Kelly.
On the fire department, Mr. Hesselman. Mr. Hesselman,
Yep, he's there.
I'll let him answer that, please. Mr. Hesselman?
Yes, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. On the replacement for company number 3 for the UTV, we have a request for 50,000 and we have a recommendation for 37,000. The $37,000, does it cover the cost of the UTV for what you originally wanted to be ordered?
The vehicle itself would be covered with that $37,000, yes.
But you originally requested $50,000 for that vehicle. Why?
The company is interested in putting a pump on the vehicle so they can go into the terrain to extinguish wildfire, which really gets into the jurisdiction of the New Jersey State Division of Forestry to handle those fires.
So the UTV, is it primarily used for, I would say off-road rescue, also off-road for fires in the woods and stuff like that?
Primarily off-road rescue and anything up in the northern section of town, yes. The pumpers have hose lengths that can reach reasonably into the wooded areas. Anything beyond the length of a hose line or two really falls to the Forestry Service to handle that.
So do we need a pump or we don't need a pump then?
I don't believe that we need a pump. I think it's an extra piece of equipment that requires frequent and potentially expensive maintenance. So the vehicle that we have now doesn't have a pump. It works perfectly fine. It's just old and really not geared to be an off-road vehicle. We're looking to replace the same that we have with something that's designed to go into the back areas of Split Rock to rescue any hikers that may be lost or injured.
And what are we gonna do with the mule that we're retiring?
That's something that we'd have to speak with the chiefs and administration.
So just so I'm clear, and it's the last question on this, Mr. Henselman. Apparently it must have been something that was requested and needed by some of the fellow departments of a pump. And now you're telling me that we don't need that and we didn't need it. Is that correct?
Well, I think looking at a vehicle, putting a pump on it could be a benefit, but it's a benefit. The vehicle needs to be able to bring first responders off the maintained road systems that we have in the northern end of the township to administer aid to an injured hiker who enjoys the outdoors of the northern half of town. If we had a little bit more financial standing at this point in time, I think it'd be a nice feature to have, but I think it's simply that, a feature, and not a necessity. The vehicle, the off-road capabilities isn't a need.
And what comes with the vehicle for the 37,000? Speaking of needs and wants. Is it a diesel?
The quote doesn't specify that, Mr. Kelly. The quote doesn't specify the powering of the vehicle.
Did we get multiple quotes from different needs and wants on that vehicle at a lower than 37 or that exceeded the 37?
The company chief of Marcella at the time used Polaris Sales.
Over in Kenville, Ledgewood?
This is out of their, I guess, their national headquarters out of Minnesota. It says it's a Polaris Ranger XP1000 North Star Premium. It's 49 state compliant, so that could signify that it's a gasoline powered engine. We've got a light kit so that we can light up the scene if we need to. Sirens, which are useful in locating lost hikers. The police often use that as a tactic to ask the lost individual if they can hear their siren so they can triangulate their location. This would give us another tool to put deeper into the woods to affect that same technique in trying to locate a lost or injured guest of the township.
Okay. The other question is, you had originally requested $100,000 for the aerial truck, number 2.
Yes.
And the recommendation was 0 for that. Are we doubling or tripling up in 2022?
No, I believe in conversation with the chiefs. The ladder truck is a 2006. So today that vehicle is 15 years old. At some point,
Mount Hope?
Mount Hope, yes. We need to start considering replacement of these vehicles as they're, especially the ladder truck, it's the only vehicle in town that can reach the higher buildings. And as you know, we're doing a lot of development in town with multi-story residential structures. We need to consider budgeting money to replace this vehicle within the near future. I don't think it's critical to replace it today, but the capital budget program provides a 5-year window to look at these things so that you and the other council can consider those options and start budgeting the appropriate monies for these vehicles. Ladder trucks can be upwards of $1 million to replace what we have currently today.
It seems like the plan that you have there, it's about $1.25 million that's there, but at the in 2025, that price could far exceed that amount from the difference from today versus tomorrow, 5 years from now.
Absolutely correct, yes.
So you don't think any monies should be maybe thrown in that line to help assist into a quicker purchase period of whether it's a year to make it that much sooner to purchase?
In consultation with the administration as we were leading up to this capital introduction, the chiefs and I feel that we're okay in putting it off for a year so that other projects in town can get their fair due. There's only a finite amount of money that the town has, and the fire department has no interest in consuming all of those resources. There's other areas that also need equal attention.
So then why make the request for 100 grand?
Because it's a request.
Can I, Mr. Jackson, can I say something here, please?
Sure.
We added 50,000 into the 2022 budget and 50,000 into the 2023. We moved 100 out.
I asked if we had doubled it, Mrs. Seeger, and I didn't get any response to if there was monies that was added in. Like we did that last year where we removed some money and then we out of nowhere added 500 for recreation, and then the fire department took the hit on that, but it was doubled up for the next year. So I understand all that. And then
Hey,
on the,
Mr. Kelly, can you hold on 1 second for your next question?
no, on the purchase of various equipment, Mr. Henselman.
Hey, Mr. Kelly, you're no longer recognized right now. Hold on a second, I'll get back to you.
Generator maintenance.
Please mute him. Is there anybody on the phone, Chrissy, to ask questions from the public? I'd like to open it to the public since we're supposed to open it at 7.
I do have a few call-ins.
Okay, so Mr. Kelly, we'll get back to you, but it's a little past 7, so I want to go to open to the public. So go ahead, Mr. Superintendent.
I have Jim Russo.
Sorry.
Do you have any questions, Chief Russo?
He muted himself. Joseph Aragona.
No. Okay.
Lisa Salberg.
Yes, actually, I do. So Lisa Salberg, 10 Bergen Hill. So I've taken a look at the Rockaway Township Tax Map, specifically Megan's Road, and I did some calculations on how many houses it would take to pay for some of the legal expenses that we're incurring. And as a point of interest, if you look at the houses 14 through 32 on Megan's Road, even numbers only, there are 10 homes, and those 10 homes work very hard every year to pay $74,479 in property taxes. The legal expenses to date for the year for 2020 so far, and then coming into 2021 for Mr. Kelly and his continual filing of legal actions. As I understand it, the costs are standing right now with 1 1/4 or 1.5 cases in process, somewhere between $60,000 and $75,000. So those 10 homes, those 10 families on Megan's Road, Mr. Kelly's neighbors, pay the property taxes for an entire year to pay for 1.5 lawsuits. The total for the suits that are currently pending could be in excess of $200,000, which would mean many more neighbors will be paying their entire property tax amount to fund not additional services, not improved services. In fact, they'll see nothing from that money spent out. So I do have some questions for the administration and our town attorney related to this matter. I would like to know, and I'm sure many other members of the public would like to know, what the total cost of the litigation brought by Councilman Kelly are to date, and what are the anticipated costs for the currently standing litigation through 2021, as best as can be estimated. Question number 2, can the town help keep the residents updated on these costs with a running tally on the town website so it is completely transparent to all residents exactly how much this litigation is costing. Third, I'd like to hear from the town attorney and administration as to when insurance steps in. Are there any costs from his litigation that are covered by insurance? And if so, from the finance department, what happens to our premiums when we are constantly going to the till to ask our insurance company if they are at all responsible for any of this to pay for anything? So what percentage increase would we be likely to see? Question 4, how many residents are going to have to work all year, pay taxes, and not receive improvements or additional services because of this litigation? The rough calculations are upwards of 30 homes, 30 properties. Imagine what could be done for the town with this money spent on something that actually serves the people. Question to the town attorney, if he can comment. I think the residents would like to know if the chronic litigator seeks any particular relief that will benefit the community, or is it particularly self-serving on his part to continue with this litigation? And my last item is that the meetings have generally been very well run on WebEx, and I know that's a challenge. I run a lot of these types of meetings myself. But there is one person who chronically talks over and interrupts other speakers. He speaks out of turn, he interrupts, makes snide comments. Can we set a policy that the clerk manage the microphones, and only at the direction of the council president will somebody be unmuted to speak, so that the people listening on the outside or for the future can actually hear what is being said without snide remarks, comments, and muttering under their breath? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Salberg. Ms. Seeger, I'm assuming you took notes, or we'll follow up with her on some of those questions. I'm sorry, Ms. Clipperton, any more callers?
Patrick Egan?
Yes, hi, Patrick Egan, 59 Lennox Road, Rockaway. Ms. Salberg, you did an excellent job summarizing what's on a lot of residents' mind in this town, so I'm looking forward to hearing those answers as well. But the only problem I have, and it's not spending our taxpayer money on much needed items to keep our roads clear and safe, and our toilets flushing. The roads department, the water department, if we're arguing, or if we're considering, $1,000 so they can't have a computer to, effectively run our sewers and our water and our roads, but we are spending thousands upon thousands of dollars in frivolous lawsuits, that I have a problem with. So I would like also to hear the answers to those questions. And let's keep our roads department and our water department flowing, because they're doing an excellent job. And let's not bicker about $1,000 computer if that's going to keep my toilets flushing. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everything you're doing. Have a good night.
Thank you. Ms. Clipperton?
Mr.
We have no
Jackson,
other callers.
Hold on, that's the last caller?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Seeger, any emails?
No, not at this time, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Clipperton, can I be recognized as a member of the public to speak?
We've been through this before, Mr. Kelly.
Just say yes or no, Mr. Jackson, that's all.
According to our attorney's
I'd like to
advice,
speak
no,
at the open as a member of the public, Mr. Jackson.
Here we go. Hey, get ready, everybody. Next lawsuit's coming. Now, Mr. Kelly, our advice of our counsel is that no, you cannot be. You're a council member. You can't be both.
I am asking you if I can speak. It's a yes or no.
You cannot be recognized member of public. I have a motion to close open to the public.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Quinn and Mr. Salberg. Clerk.
Councilmember Kelly?
Abstain.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
I'm so sick.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Kretz?
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Noon?
Yes.
Vice President Sackett?
Yes.
President Jackson?
Yes, that's 8 yeses, 1 abstention. Public's open to public is closed. Back to the budget. Mr. Kelly, you can continue.
Mr. Henselman?
Yes, sir.
This is the purchase of various equipment and airbags and turnout gear and stabilization equipment and so on page 235. Do you have that by chance in front of you?
I have the, yeah, what?
Do you actually have the budget books that we have that were prepared on January 14th of this year?
I've got my reference book that I can answer questions from. I've
Do you
got a
have
copy
the
of the capital
actual,
budget program.
do you actually have the same book that we have though in front of you?
Oh, because I'm not privy to the other departments' budgets that are adding to your page numbers.
It's a complete public record all the way around. But with the purchase of those various equipments, are generators part of those purchases within the fire departments?
There's generators on the fire trucks that would be considered equipment. I don't know if we'd capitalize those items because they don't rise to the dollar value, and I don't believe they rise to the life cycle required to be a capital purchase.
For the buildings themselves?
I'm not familiar with those generators. That's not a fire department asset.
Mrs. Seeger, are the generators owned by the township or are they owned by the fire departments?
Most of them are owned by the township. If you're talking the ones outside, the automatic ones that go on, they're owned by the
Yes.
township. Most of them are owned by the township, but I would have to check. I think they're pretty much owned by the township.
Do we know if any of them need to be replaced that would be part of capital?
I am not aware of any.
Mrs. Palmieri, would one of those generators to run the entire facility for each one of those fire houses, would that fall under capital?
As long as it's a 5-year life and typically exceeds around $5,000, we can consider it capital.
Okay. Mr. Hanselman, do you believe that we need any generators or replacement of generators in any of those fire departments?
The generators that provide standby power to the buildings are a function of the water department, to my understanding, not the fire department.
So, Mrs. Seeger, maybe we can help clarify this. Are the generators for the buildings fire department or water department related?
You're going to have to clarify exactly what you mean by that, Mr. Kelly. Can you be more clear?
Well, if it was to be purchased for a generator, would we then put it under the capital budget for the water department or public works, or would we do it under the fire department?
It would depend.
Ms. Seeger, I think what he means is it's the generators are dual purposed. They work for the water department and they serve the fire department. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I don't know how the water department, since there's no water service in Marcella and Hibernia, how the water department would benefit from that.
Most of the generators were written by a grant by a former water utility person, and they were paid for out of FEMA money, and then thus fall under the maintenance of that department because he wrote the grants for all the fire departments to have generators when the money was available a couple of years ago. And
So
that's
when the
why, and it's more prudent, let me finish, Mr. Kelly,
Okay.
please. It is more prudent to have a maintenance contract for all of them at once instead of everybody doing their own. But the fire departments, if we wrote the grant, do not own the generators. The township does. And they maintain them with the proper electricians, with the proper public works certificate. And we have people who maintain them and fix them when we have a problem. And they're usually there within an hour.
Okay, so we don't have any generators that we need to replace in any of the fire departments?
Nobody from the fire departments have requested one at this time that I am aware of.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just bringing it up now. Maybe since January 14th to where we're at right now, there could have been a change in that. Mr. Henselman, do we know if there's any problems with any generators within the fire departments?
At this time, all generators, to my knowledge, are operating.
And Mr. Henselman, do we know that we have a current contract for maintenance on these generators, that if there was an issue, we would know about them?
To my knowledge, the generators at the firehouses to support loss of power are not under the purview of the fire department.
Do we have a contract though? Are they falling under the, Mrs. Seeger, do we have contracts with those, the generators in the fire departments currently?
Mr. Kelly, I would be happy to get back to you if you let me know all the questions you have about the generators, and I will personally email you like I did last time you had a question.
Well, it doesn't help me now though. Just real quick, one
We
question.
don't know the answers to these things.
Well, one question would be, she just said that we have contracts. Is it one contract for the township for all of the generators that we have in the town?
Mr. Kelly, I will be glad to look into it for you.
All right, so my question would be is, do we have a contract in place currently from last year to this year for the maintenance and upkeep of the generators in the firehouses?
She's gonna look those contracts up.
Mr. Mayor, you're not recognized. Thank you, though.
I
Mr.
will
Kelly,
get back to you.
she's gonna get
Thank
back to you.
Mrs. Seeger.
Thank you.
At this time, I have no questions on page 235.
Okay, 236, Mr. Kelly.
On 236, we had a request for a utility van for the buildings and grounds. Is there, if I remember correctly, the sign department for traffic, they currently have a van that they're using. And I believe it's going to be replaced with a utility body truck. I'm not sure if that's happened yet. Is there a possibility of providing the van that traffic was using for the signs to go to buildings and grounds? Ms. Seeger?
Can you say that again? I didn't hear what you said. Thank
Which,
you.
which
Ms.
line
Seeger?
item are you trying to get rid of, I guess? What line item are you looking at?
Well, there's no line on 236. They're not identified by line item. It just says purchase of utility van. I know that there was asked for 27,000.
And zero. And zero.
I'm sorry.
Yep. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have the wrong thing
That's
that's
okay.
marked on there.
Nope, that's okay.
The next question on that would be Parks and Rec. Purchase of the playground equipment. What area is this playground going to be upgraded or revamped?
So,
I think it's for a few playgrounds, but I will get back to you and answer your question if you want to know specifically.
Mr. Mayor, you seem to be up on all of this stuff, or maybe the rec committee. Maybe Mr. Brooks can answer that, or maybe Mr. Kritz.
I think we'll hold off. We'll look into it and we'll get you a proper answer. I don't want to jump in and give you something that's incorrect. That's why I ask for all of the council people, if you have pointed questions or things that require us to look up, please let us know in advance. But we will look it up and get back to you as we have been. Thank you.
Well, we're voting tonight on this page, and then as you see, there's a kind of a trend with Mr. Jackson not reopening tabs.
Well,
it's not up to me, Mr. Kelly.
Council President, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Now you can ask. There you go.
The value of asking questions prior, you can see what's happening right here. The
No,
administration-
look at it, Mr. Puzio, as you have professionals that put together a budget.
talking about
Collectively, the people that you have put together a budget are over $600,000, and I figured.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
I'm trying to speak.
If you've been put,
Mr. Mayor, don't even waste your breath on him.
I'm not even speaking about him. I just want to point out, this is why the meetings are getting slowed down, because we're not able to do our job effectively without some of the questions being proposed prior. They can be repeated at the meetings. It's ridiculous.
Common sense.
It's ridiculous.
You don't know the answer. That's not a problem, Mr. Mayor.
I just told you I don't know the answer. I'm going to try to get you a proper answer.
I
have
understand
the
that.
answer. Mr. Kelly, I would have had the answer if you would have sent us an email. You don't have to talk to me. You could send it to Ms. Seeger. You could send it to Mr. Dyer. You can send us an email. We'll get you the answers. This is a product of not asking us prior. I don't know the answer.
Well,
I
if we
do
had,
not
if
know
we
the
had the authority of the
That's
building
correct.
and grounds, if we
Okay.
had an employee,
All right,
department
Mr.
head
Mayor,
for
that's enough.
that,
Let's
for
move
whatever
forward.
reason, people,
So, Mr. Kelly,
the questions
they
that
don't
we
have
have,
an
Mr.
answer.
Mayor.
They
So
don't
you
have an answer
purposely
to
not
your
have those
question
people on
tonight.
there to answer questions for.
So there's no answer to your question tonight, Mr. Kelly, for the 60,000. So what's your next
I
question?
only believe it might have been maybe twice or three times, Mr. Jackson, but I recognize your sarcasm.
I didn't, Mr. Kelly. I'm just telling you, there's obviously, there's no answer right now. So what other questions do you have on this page?
I have on page 237.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Let's just go to the municipal building bathroom upgrades. How
Where's
many
that?
bathrooms are we dealing with when it comes to the $180,000 in the municipal building?
Mr. Jackson, I can answer that.
You're recognized, Mrs. Seeger.
It'd be 4 bathrooms, 2 upstairs in the foyer and 2 downstairs in the police lobby foyer. And the reason this amount is so high is because they have to be ADA compliance, which they're not up to date ADA compliance. We have to have an architect to do the drawings. We can't do it like we did the other additions.
So they're roughly about $45,000 a piece each bathroom?
It would vary because the 2 bathrooms upstairs in the courtroom lobby where that gets a high usage, those are larger than the ones in the police lobby. So I would think that they're more expensive.
Okay. Now, Mr. Jackson, if I can just go back to that page 235, because it just brought me back to
Yeah,
something
go ahead,
else.
Mr. Kelly. Yep, go ahead.
We had the road garage in engineering, design, and construction. And I think it goes down to 2 pages or 2 lines. So the engineering and design, I think it's $10,000. If you look at it from the line all the way across, it looks like there's nothing there. But then if you go down because it continues, it looks like there's 10,000.
You're looking at the road garage under Public Works?
Correct, yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it goes down to the 2016 and 2019 capital.
Yep.
Is there any way that we can do engineering in-house? I mean, we do have an engineer that is unbelievably certified. Is there anything that we can have in-house done as far as engineering to minimize or eliminate the $10,000? Mrs. Seeger?
Mrs. Seeger, if you'd like to answer that, or
Mrs. Palmer, the engineer put in what she thought she would need. I don't know if she's doing some of it or someone is outside, but that's what she felt she needed to help with the doing the structure of the building.
How do we not know if the engineer is going to be doing some stuff in-house to save us the money? I mean, wouldn't that be something that you would, if she is doing something of that nature, we would talk about it and somewhat applaud her for those efforts and saving us money. We have no idea whether our engineering department's doing some of the engineering for that building.
She is overseeing all the engineering that is done on every single project.
Can she draw plans?
Personally, I don't know what her certificate she holds.
You're not recognized, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, you're recognized.
You're speaking to the administration. Mr. Kelly, do you know her certifications offhand? Because I don't. I know she's, do you know what she possesses? You might be able to answer the question yourself.
Well, I believe she can do it with her certifications that she has from when I had spoken to her in
Certifications are
2018.
those that you're speaking of? What certification?
But it's a matter of, are we allowing the engineer to do that, or is there a willingness of the engineering department to do it?
When we evaluate projects, we have department heads who are experts in their field.
Yeah.
Obviously, she holds certain certifications. Offhand, I know she's qualified for the position. Obviously, we all feel she is because we voted for her to appoint her to the position for multiple years. Exactly what certification she holds, I'm not an engineer. I'm asking you if you could explain to me what she holds. Maybe you might be able to answer your own question. Maybe there's a certain a drawing or an architectural design. Maybe Mr. Brooks can be recognized and shed some
Well,
light.
I believe that she's a PE. I mean, she holds one certification as a PE, and then
Okay.
PEs that I use do engineering for my projects. I just didn't know if maybe Mrs. Ferrante can do some of those things to maybe offset some of this money that we have here, not only the 10,000 now, but even moving forward from what we have.
She's extremely busy, I can tell you that, because we're doing the Peterson project, we're doing some other projects trying to get caught up. So if she were able to do that, I would have assumed that she would have said to me that she could do more. So, I mean.
Is it fair to say you didn't ask?
Of course, I took her recommendation. Why would I ask her? I go off of the department heads to see what their abilities are at the time. When I say abilities, I don't mean their skill set. I mean their ability with the amount of projects, their time horizons with everything that's going on. So if she was able to do it, I'm sure she would have stepped up to the plate. She's a fantastic engineer. She works very hard. We all know that. So if she was able to do that and shave some dollars off, she would have said so. I just trust in her judgment.
Okay, but maybe it would be willingness for us to ask those questions. I mean, we always go by assumption, Mr. Mayor, and that doesn't always happen.
On a day-to-day basis, I do ask, hey, where can we save some money? Where can we save some dollars?
And what did she say about this?
I didn't ask her on this particular project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
What else? Hold on, Mr. Kelly's still going. Unless you're making a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
The only thing I have here is underwater is a purchase of utility response vehicle.
What page on, Mr. Kelly?
237.
Okay.
Underwater.
Yep.
And maybe Mr. Garabrandt can enlighten us of the $185,000 purchase on that vehicle.
Mr. Jackson, I could help with that if you call on me.
You're recognized, Ms. Seeger.
This is a response truck that certain water people, they don't have to waste time on getting all the equipment out of everybody's trucks. Everybody's has different equipment. And when they go to an emergency, it will all be in that truck. And they just have to go get that truck, and they have all the equipment they need instead of calling 5 or 6 different trucks. Who has the saw, who has this? So it will be set up to have everything that they need for a response in one truck. And it should help with the
Mrs.
response.
Seeger, as a
time.
follow-up to that, are you indicating that all the men that would have equipment in the other trucks that they normally drive wouldn't be driving their trucks to the site, and they'd all be going into this truck?
This will be equipped with the equipment they need to respond to every emergency that they know of.
But each one of those individuals to respond to that scene has all the equipment in the trucks that they'd be driving in addition to this truck?
Not necessarily.
What would be the equipment that would be carried in these trucks that's not carried in the other trucks?
What I'm saying is it will have equipment in there that they don't have to go to various trucks or go back to the shop. If they put stuff there, it will be all in one. It's like having a nice ladder truck when you have a tall building. It has all the equipment on the truck already. They can access it faster, and they have the right equipment to do it.
I understand that, but we've been functioning without this type of a vehicle for a very long period of time. And obviously that all those other individuals that are called to that particular scene would be driving the trucks that have equipment in it. So are we going to be removing equipment from those other trucks to place it into this truck?
Not every single person goes to every single water main break. It depends on who's there. And for a long time, we had dial-up telephones, but now we have cell phones. So this is an improvement that the department head sees that would help with their response time and serve the needs of the township to get water back on quickly. And I happen to agree with them. I think it's a good idea.
And when you talk about response times, I mean, we're very conscientious about response times, right? Mrs. Seeger?
Yeah, do you have a question related to the budget?
I do. We're talking about response times because it's dealing with vehicles. And then why did we take away vehicles for the men to take home to respond to the scene directly rather than have to go back to the the shop or the DPW garage.
Mr. Kelly, this is a
You're
personnel.
not recognized, Mr. Mayor. Again, you're
Mayor,
interrupting.
you're recognized.
Can I be recognized to answer?
Yeah,
Mr.
you're
Kelly's question?
recognized.
This is a personnel decision. Given the circumstances, which I'm not going to discuss, I'm not going to discuss people's where they live, where they don't live, consistencies. This was a personnel decision based on various factors, and we'll leave it at that. And it falls under the control of the mayor of the administration. It's not a budgetary item. Thank
Hey,
you.
Mr.
I understand
Seeger,
that, Mr. Mayor, but you tell me in one breath that you
Yes,
want to get
Mr.
their
Jackson?
response times, and then
Mr.
you take
Seeger?
away the
Yes.
response time ability.
Yes, Mr.
Mr.
Jackson.
Kelly, you no longer have the floor. Mrs. Seeger, are there any other changes to the capital budget?
Yes, the chief called me up today and they need to have a little more time to research the purchase of their management system, crime reporting that they put in for 35,000. So they would like to put off that till next year when they have a better idea of the cost.
Okay,
So
so
we can, you can make a motion to make that zero if you would like.
somebody like to make that motion?
So
I move the
moved.
motion.
I'll second it.
To Mr. Quinn and Mr. Kelly. Clerk, you can take the roll call. This is to reduce the purchase of a report management system crime reporting from 35,000 to zero.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Quinn,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander,
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks,
Yes.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
Vice President Sackett,
Yes.
President Jackson,
Yes, that's 9 yeses, so that budget line item will reduce to zero.
Council President,
Yes.
I tried to get in before. Page 236.
Yep.
I'm going back to the bathrooms.
Okay.
Administration wants. My question is, did they look to see if there was any ADA grants to help offset costs dealing with ADA compliance?
Mrs. Seeger?
Yes, I asked that at the budget meeting and they were not at this time.
So when the part, when they, okay, thank you.
Can I have a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Mrs. Seeger? Ms. Seeger,
Yes, yes.
those budget sessions, when did they take place where this came up in conversation?
In November.
Have you done any research since then?
Yes, actually, we were gonna apply for a CDBG grant, but most of the money goes to the senior citizens or something else, so we were not able to put this in that grant. Is there a grant out there somewhere? Maybe there is, but we did not find one.
Thanks for your diligence, Ms. Seeger.
You're welcome.
Council President, I got a couple questions.
Go ahead.
In reference to the bathrooms also. Are the bathrooms in the police department lobby section, are they unisex with multiple stalls, or are they single stall bathrooms?
The ones in the lobby in the police store, Mr. Brooks, police lobby. They are single bathrooms. That's why I said they would cost less than upstairs that are more than one.
Okay, and the bathrooms upstairs, have you had the architect in to take a look at those to make sure there's not a lot of infrastructure that needs to be done? Because
no, not until we had the money to hire an architect to do this. We wouldn't just bring someone in until we had the money to move forward.
so we're putting money aside for something that it could be quite a larger amount if infrastructure needs to be modified, because, you know, besides moving some partitions and switching out some fixtures and everything, you know, they're relatively going to use the same sanitary lines. But if you're talking about that they need a whole new reworking, I mean, you're talking about moving everything.
I think Brian had quotes last year because this was in there. I don't know if he refreshed them for this year, but he had a good idea of how much it would cost us. But we were told we had to get an architect for the ADA requirements. And I think we just plan on fixing what's there to bring it up to speed of what is required by the ADA guidelines.
I mean, I think that amount's quite hefty if all we're doing is bringing up the ADA guidelines, to be honest.
Well, we would be replacing the sinks, we'd be replacing the stalls, everything. And I don't know if the doors have to be automatic. I didn't look into it. Brian did, and he's pretty confident, and whatever we don't spend, we won't take out money for.
Council President, may I be recognized?
Yes.
Just keep in the back of your head, I'm not saying this project because I haven't had a chance to look at it in depth. Some of the projects that we do in town have to be prevailing wage. They're done through unions. So that, obviously you and I could maybe do the project a little bit cheaper with labor and materials, but some of these projects, I'm not saying this one, I'm just saying keep it in the back of your head, have to be done through prevailing wage. Jonathan had asked that question a while back about the senior center, and we looked into it, and it was a prevailing wage union job. So that,
But that's only if it goes out to bid. If we had an in-house,
I'm just making
that can do work. I mean,
I
we
know,
don't have to
I'm just making a
wage.
statement, a general statement, just while I have it on the top of my head. I'm not speaking to this project, just for the future.
Anything else?
Can I ask a fast question, Council
Go ahead.
President?
Friedlander, you're recognized.
Thank you. Pat, this is one of the items that I talked to Pat about when I was in the municipal building. Pat, I know it has to be ADA compliant, and I know where this project is going, but got a question. I never asked, what time frame do we have to comply? In other words, does it have to be 2021? I mean, these bathrooms have been like this forever.
We've been in violation.
Well, yeah, but if it's so old, there must be a time frame that you have to comply with ADA. So what's our time frame to do this project?
Council President, can I be recognized?
Yes, Mayor Puccio.
Sometimes projects, certain existing structures are grandfathered in, and
Yes.
as long as they're not, there's no additional work done on them, there's no attempt to rehabilitate them, they can remain as is.
So would this be considered one of those?
Yeah, that's, if we renovate them, we have to make them ADA compliant.
Of course, of course.
Can I say something?
Sure, you're recognized, Mrs. Seeger.
In certain public buildings, there are timelines to how long you have to bring things up to date.
Right.
And I don't know off the top of my head, Mr. Freelander, what that date is. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's where I was headed, Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Johnson.
Joe, can I be recognized?
Go ahead, Mr. Sack, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Couple of things. And I'd sent a lot of questions in advance, and I want to thank administration for answering all my questions. A few other questions I held off until we got to this section. The senior center interior building improvements, kitchen renovation. I know the senior center is not even open right now, and I'm just wondering about this kitchen renovation. Are they going to be hosting barbecues, doing, cooking meals? I'm not really sure, what that one is. That's my first question.
I think we had to do something with one of the stoves or something, but we're also want to do it at the same time. We have CDBG grant down there. That is, the senior center is being worked through a grant. And I think this was above what we needed to do. And we wanted to do it all at the same time, not to wreck it, because we're already doing that grant work down there. for a big improvement, and it would be the prudent time to do it.
When are they even starting that?
Excuse me?
Is that going to be this year?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
have to do the grant.
Okay. Okay. Also, similar to that, Mr. Kelly had asked about the playground equipment. Seems like we're not sure. It could be all over the town. I know we put in the new playground at Peterson. I wish we had a little more information on that one. I should ask someone in advance, and I do apologize.
Let me see if Al Noth could answer that question. He's on.
Oh, how convenient.
I just realized he was on.
Yes, the playground that we're looking to replace is at O'Connor Field in Hibernia.
Connor Field, Hibernia. Okay. And then Al, do you also know about the various park and equipment improvements for 30,000?
Yeah, I do. So Dave Swanton and I went down. We spent a few days together looking at all the facilities. Came up with a list. But the various projects we're looking to do is some lighting repairs to the lights, fencing, upgrades to the parking lots with guide rails replacement. We are also looking to probably address the batting cage at Peterson Field. We're looking into doing some top dressing projects, Hudsonia and home. We're looking to maybe borrow Rockaway's top sheeter or a top dresser. We're doing that in-house. Some of the lighting projects is DBO, Birchwood, Norway, and Marcella. The guide rails would be Egbert's Lake and Mount Hope Pond.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Also, going back to the bathroom, I'm just trying to wrap my head around with the 4 bathrooms, $108,000, and I know we have to raise and whatnot, but that just seems quite a lot of money for 4 bathrooms. So I want to make a motion to cut that down to $90,000.
Second that.
Who seconded?
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you.
Mr. Sackett, could you please repeat that for me so I have it recorded correctly?
He made a motion for the line item that says municipal building bathroom upgrades to be cut from 180,000 to 90,000.
That is correct.
You can take the roll call whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Quinn?
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander?
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz?
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Noon?
Yes.
Vice President Sackett?
Yes.
President Jackson?
Yes, that's 9 yeses. Motion carries that capital expenditure will be lowered to 90,000. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Saget?
Yes, Council President, I'd like to make another motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to add back in, I was a little disappointed that we didn't have anything set aside for Peterson Field trying to plan with improvements. And I'd like to make a motion to add back in, we cut out $35,000 from the police department and just 90,000. I'd like to make a motion to add into the Peterson Field, I guess improvements at least had set up last year. I'd like to make a motion to put in $125,000.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion on that?
We could have 5 minutes of discussion.
Mr. Sackett, last year when we talked about this, you came out of nowhere, left field, no pun intended, with a $500,000 increase for the capital for Peterson Field. We just got done approving $950,000 for a tennis court and a basketball court, which is an insane amount of money. And now you want to increase the budget again for the capital. And just so I know, how much is that money you want to increase?
25.
25,000?
125.
125. Another $125,000 that we're going to add on to that. Is this something that just came to your head today, or something that you knew for a while?
I've been thinking about it, just like your lawsuits. They just kind of pop in on us. Same thing, my friend.
Well, it's not so much that, and I appreciate your response to a simple question.
Right. Nah,
but when do you anticipate this additional $125,000? You're not willing to put anything on referendum for the taxpayers and the voters to vote upon if they want this.
Can we put your lawsuits on referendum?
All this money into Peterson Field. Where are the other concerns in Rockaway that you may have or not have? I mean, do you believe that it's solely about recreation? How much do you have a threshold of what you want to spend?
Well, I'm asking you, do you have a threshold for your lawsuits? Because all that money you've wasted, we could have been done with Peterson by now, my friend.
You know what, Mr. Sackett?
You waste so much money on these lawsuits.
I don't, Mr. Sackett.
I'm trying to improve the town for our kids, for our property value. Destroying it. So I'm trying to get things moving a little bit. I know you're not for anything. You never go to Peterson.
I am, unfortunately. I'm Mr. Sackett.
I'm trying to improve stuff in the town. I'm always working to improve stuff. You're always trying to bring it down. So that's my motion. You can either vote yes or no. That's it.
Mr. Sackett, my intention is not to disallow any of the stuff happening. I'm looking at a cost analysis of what we have moving forward so that the people know, because again, there's 40% of the kids that don't participate in recreation. There are seniors that don't pay for it. Going back to when you talk about the litigation, look at the budget. Your legal's never increased. You can throw out all your fallacy numbers that you want, Mr. Salberg and his wife and Mr. Jackson and Mr. Patron.
That's enough.
The budget and go from there.
We can take the
And that's
roll.
your answer.
There's only one person on this call spreading fallacies, and it's you, Mr. Kelly. Clerk, take
Council President.
Clerk, take the roll call now, Mr. Salberg.
Council President, before we have a vote, I did have a question.
Yeah, real quick.
Thank you. I just wanted to, Councilman Sackett, is this money earmarked for a specific project?
We had set that money up aside last year. Lisa had set up. I forget what she called it under. I don't know if she's still on here.
Yeah, you got no clue.
I forget what it's called. I'll have my notes.
Mr. Kelly, you're not recognized.
It doesn't matter. You've got no clue. Just let me throw some money out there.
Mr. Kelly, you're not recognized. Please be quiet. You're out of order again.
Just throw some
Mute him.
lawsuits out there. That's
all right. Let's go. So,
Council President.
Yes, Mr. Brooks, go ahead.
Just one question. Actually, two questions. Number one question before we vote: could we consider possibly reallocating this money towards Parks Lake and maybe doing some of the work that's intended for Parks Lake? Because
so here's what I'll say. The motion's been made and seconded. So I think at this point we need to take a vote on that. And if it doesn't pass, then you could make that motion to actually do that. I believe that's the course we'd have to follow.
Clerk, can we make a motion while there's a motion?
Is it regarding the motion at hand?
Well,
yeah, they want to make a new motion.
Be a motion then?
You can't have two main motions on the table at once. If you're going to make a motion, must have something to do with Vice President Sackett's motion.
I make a motion to rescind Council President or Vice President's motion.
Anybody second that? I don't know if you can. Clerk, can you take a roll call, please, in the first motion to add $125,000 in the capital budget to Peterson Field improvements?
The second motion would be first.
No, it wouldn't.
That is correct. Well, you need a second. We don't have a second.
Right, there was no second, so there's.
Okay, well, Mr. Jackson's incorrect.
No, I asked if there was a second. Nobody seconded, so as usual, you're wrong. Go ahead, Clerk, you can take the roll call.
Councilmember Kelly,
No.
Councilmember Quinn,
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander,
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz,
Yes.
Councilmember Salberg.
No.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
He said no.
Thank you.
Correct.
Councilmember Brooks,
No.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
Vice President Sackett,
Yes.
President Jackson,
Yes, that's 6 yeses, 3 nos. So 125,000 will be added to the Peterson Field improvements.
Council President, may I be recognized?
Absolutely, Mr. Brooks.
To just jump back over to that purchase of playground equipment again. Mr. Knopf mentioned that it was for O'Connor Field. O'Connor is a school property. It's owned by the Board of Education. So I'm not sure that we should be putting playground equipment or refurbishing playground equipment on the Board of Ed property. Anyone else have a concern with that?
I do, but you know, it matters to you, not me. They won't answer my questions.
Can I make a motion to withdraw that $60,000 from that playground?
Can we get confirmation if it is in fact school property, Mr. Knopf?
I'm aware of any of the illegalities between the township utilizing the Board of Education. That all has been set in motion way before that I've been around. The playground is 20 years old and is in need of replacement. I don't know who initially purchased the original equipment. That equipment back in 2000 was purchased by the township. So I don't know what happened back in 2000.
The recent KDM playground, did we pay for that out of the municipal budget?
The KDM playground, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Mrs.
Can I
Seeger,
make
do
a
you have
motion,
any
Council
information on
President?
that? Why we're spending money on school property?
From what I understand, we maintain that field and we maintain that playground at this time. So they would
Do we
just
maintain
replace it.
KDM school?
I don't know that. I only
Do we
know about this
maintain
one.
Dwyer?
Listen, Mr. Kelly. if
You're
you
not
don't-
recognized, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you. Stop interrogating the administration. Ask
I'm
point-
asking questions. I'm sorry that the cop is
Listen.
coming out of you about interrogation, but
You're
these are simple
firing-
budget questions about what we take care of and what we don't take care of.
They're not.
I mean,
but they're
I asked a
defensive
question,
questions.
you wouldn't respond to it. Mr. Brooks asked a question, all of a sudden everybody knows. The selective amnesia has gone away.
Absolutely false what you just said.
Not true. You didn't know, your administration had no idea, but here's Mr. Knopf telling everybody everything.
I can't even get a word in. I can't even speak. He's talking about freedom of speech. I can't even get a word in.
You're a guest, Mr. Puzio. Remember
He's
that.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you. Ask a question that's budget related.
It is.
Okay, it's not budget related. You're asking us if we're taking care of KDM. There's
Well,
nothing.
apparently the school property is
Can I
on budget
please
related
finish?
if it's equipment
Can
on the
I
school.
please finish? I can't even finish a sentence.
Oh.
I can't even finish my sentence. I start and he just jumps right in. Please
Yeah,
stop
okay.
chilling. Stop
Don't be
chilling my
disrespectful,
speech.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kelly, stop chilling my speech, my freedom of speech. Please, let me finish. Let me
No,
finish.
no.
There's nothing in the budget here that talks about KDM. We're not deciding on KDM. We have an agenda. We're deciding about O'Connor Field and the monies that are going to be spent there, whether they're going to be spent there or not. There's nothing here that talks about KDM, that talks about DBO, Copeland, or any other schools. Mr. Brooks asked a question about the ownership of the property and the arrangement that was in place. Mr. Knopf answered that it was from 20 plus years ago that we've been maintaining that property, that it's almost like something that's grandfathered in. We're not discussing KDM, what's done there. We're discussing this property. Please let's stick to the budget's items at hand.
Well,
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we maintain those properties as well,
Kelly,
Mr.
you're not
Mayor.
recognized.
And
Mr.
because-
Kelly, you're not recognized. Mr. Brooks, based on your question.
Because
if
we
you
maintain
answer-
those So I was
Mr.
wondering
Kelly,
if there was a
please mute
comparison.
him. He's not
We
recognized.
participate
Mr.
in
Brooks,
those programs to replace
Mr. Brooks,
playground equipment.
Mr. Brooks, based on the
Into that
question and the
information.
answer, do you have any motion you want to make?
I would like to make a motion, Council President.
Yep.
To remove that $60,000 for the purchase of playground equipment for O'Connor Field and to apply that towards work to be done at Parks Lake.
I second that motion.
Okay.
Council President, can I be recognized?
We have a motion already, Mr. Mayor. You know you
I'm
can't
not
interrupt.
speaking to you, Mr. Kelly. I'm speaking to the council president.
You're interrupting.
Hold on
though. We
one
have a
second.
motion.
Kelly, you're not recognized. Come on, man. Try and grow up. Try and be an adult.
We have an open motion, Mr. Mayor.
Try and be an adult.
Mute him.
Superintendent, did you get the motion and what it's about?
We're removing 60,000 for the playground equipment and we're applying it towards work to be done at Park Lake.
Sure.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Clerk, you can take the roll call.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Kelly.
You keep muting me. Yes.
Stop talking out of line.
I do. Councilmember Quinn.
I don't know what work is going to be done at Peterson's, all abstain, at Parks Lakes, all abstain.
Councilmember Friedlander.
No.
Councilmember Kritz.
Yes.
Councilmember Saddleberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Noon.
Yes.
President Sackett.
Yes.
President Jackson.
Yes. Clerk, so did we have 7 yeses, 1 abstain and 1 no?
Yes.
Okay. Can we just go back real quick? I just want to confirm the motion to move the money to Peterson Field. That was a 6-3 vote. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this motion also carries. Mr. Mayor, did you want to speak? You're recognized now.
I did. Prior to me taking over as mayor, Mayor Datcherson had a plan in the works to do some rehabilitation to Parks Lake. The prior councils, there was an issue with the capital budget. It wasn't approved. Certain projects weren't approved. And it was basically a slash and burn mentality. So I'm trying to catch up.
Not true.
I'm trying, please, Mr. Kelly.
Stop interrupting. You're out of order and you're a child.
Please. I'm just trying to speak.
There's no crash and burn. Not true.
Mr. Kelly, please be quiet.
I didn't say crash and burn. What are you talking about?
Just go ahead, Mr. Mayor, please.
So there was a slash and burn mentality with the old budget where we did nothing. We did no projects. There was no improvements at Peterson. There was the project with the basketball courts, the tennis courts, Parks Lake, the gazebo project was never brought to fruition. Everything was very chaotic. So I sat down when I took over with the engineering department, with Ms. Seeger, with Ms. Palmieri. We have some dollars allocated and a plan as to we're going to be doing some improvements over by the Legion, by Parks Lake, to make that area a little bit nicer. So that's all I wanted to say. Once that moves forward, I'll get into it a little bit more. I just wanted to give you a precursor because I noticed the council, there's a little push and pull. Some people want Parks Lake to be beautified, and I want those folks to know that we're concentrating on that too.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions on the capital budget? Anybody like to make a motion to approve it?
I make a motion to approve the capital budget.
Second.
Okay. Clerk, you could take the roll call.
Councilmember Kelly.
Yes.
Councilmember Quinn.
Yes.
Councilmember Friedlander.
Yes.
Councilmember Kritz.
Yes.
Councilmember Saddleberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Noon,
Yes.
President Sackett,
Yes.
President Jackson,
Yes, that's 9 yeses. Section 23 is approved. And I believe that is the last section of the budget book. With that said, I think that's all we had to get through tonight. I appreciate everybody's diligence and questions and motions and all those things. We have our next regular meeting on the 23rd. So with that said, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Quinn and Mr. Friedlander, all in favor? Aye.
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 Ayes. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Chrissy, you could stop the recording and the live stream. Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Thanks for
night.
your hard work, everybody.
Now you can mute.